Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of the 2026 Winter Olympic Games in Milano Cortina, and it has been an absolute fantastic games. Once again, yes, there is some, bluffs here or there. Yes, there are some issues, but you know what? Overall, it was a very, very solid games hosted by the Italian nation. But now, as we look on into the next Olympics in 2030, let's take a look at what's possibly going to happen and what's coming up in the next Olympics in 2030, and as well further on in 2034 and 2038. But before we get started, please make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the Zuck TV YouTube channel if you have not yet. Also ring the bell to be notified of when I post next. And with that out of the way, let's get into this video. So the 2030 game takes us to the French Alps. Now, the majority of these sports will be held in the French Alps, but a lot of the indoor stuff will be held in Nice, of all places. Now, I've been to Nice. It is a beautiful, lovely city in the summer, nice and warm, but in the winter, it's not really much of a winter town. It does get a little bit colder, but again, it's not so much of a winter city, a winter village, kind of like how we saw with Milan this Olympics, where Milan is more kind of, of a big city without, a major winter. It does get a little bit cold, but nothing crazy. But the mountain regions will be hosting a lot of the colder events, and it gets cold up there, kind of like Cortina in this Olympics. So that's where this kind of goes here. Now look at this map that I have. This is from the Olympic website, and you can see just how wide of a range that these venues will be in. Obviously, you see the Nice cluster. The Nice cluster will host a lot of the different sports. But when you go up to the mountains, it's all over the place, almost all in a single line. But again, it's not that easy to get to some of ththese places. As you will see here, this is what it will take to get you from Nice all the way up to Le Grand Bornand, which will host, the most north event that they have currently lined up. Yes, that is a 6-hour drive to get there. Now, when I did this map, it was probably about 4 or 5 a.m. European time, so there wouldn't be that much traffic in the first place. But still, a 6-hour drive without any major traffic, that's still pretty big, and that's a very long journey. It's almost the same as what we saw for the 2026 games, where it was reported that it's about a 5-hour trip between Milan and Cortina. Now, another thing that's interesting about these games is what's being used as venues for the different sports. Now, we saw in the 2026 games, the speed skating rink was held at an exhibition convention center in Milan, something that we've really never seen before. And it's all a part of the IOC's new push to use existing venues and try to use them to the best capacity. Like here. Yes, this is the hockey rink, or one of the hockey rinks that will be used in the 2030 games. And if you're asking why is the floor green, because that's a soccer pitch. Yes, the hockey will be played inside the Nice football stadium. I kid you not, both rinks are going to be held there with an artificial roof over top of the opening in that roof. So this is just one of the ways that Nice is kind of using existing venues without building a brand new one for these games. So it's already pretty interesting that we saw hockey be played in a convention center at the 2026 games, but seeing them played on a football field or a soccer pitch for that matter, that's going to be a bit interesting. Now, I would like to add, just before we move on here, the swimming at the 2024 Olympics was actually also held in a soccer stadium, Paris La Défense Arena. It is as big and can host soccer games, but they shrunk it down like this, like we saw in that picture, for a swimming pool. So it's definitely possible now that we saw that. Just put a hockey rink over it and it should be all right. But it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out. But one thing, as we've also seen over the last couple of Olympics, is that the IOC is opening to adding new optional sports to the program for those Olympics. Like we saw in 2026, ski mountaineering took part in their first Olympics. It was actually very interesting to watch. I watched a couple of the races. It was actually very cool. Now they're trying maybe to open it up to a couple of more optional sports for the 2030 games. This is the possible list that I saw online. Now these are just 8 different sports that I saw on a list that could be added. We got big ones. 3-on-3 hockey would be very interesting. Cyclocross, cross-country running, ice climbing even for that matter. Ski mountaineering is looking to make a return. Speed skiing, we haven't seen that for a while. There's a reason why, but that could be a part of the Olympics. Telemark skiing and ice cross. Those are just a couple of sports that could be added. Now, according to the organizing committee chair for the 2030 games, it looks like ice cross, ski mountaineering, 3-on-3 hockey, cyclocross, cross-country running, those are kind of like the main sports that could possibly get in. There is some backlash about the last two, cross-country running and cyclocross, because they are more summer style sports, but they can be played in the winter. So there's a bit of a backlash from that, from the organizing committee and the IOC and some of the other members, about why are we going to have a summer sport in the Winter Olympics. So there's just a bit of a gray area there, but it seems like there could be a high possibility that ice cross could get in, which, if anyone from Canada knows ice cross, I'm kind of talking about the Red Bull crashed ice style sport, which we have seen before and we haven't really seen in a while. If that gets in, that will be very interesting. But those are just a couple of sports as well that could get in, and if they do, I think these Olympics coming up is going to be very, very interesting. So now we'll move on to the 2034 games, and these will be held in Salt Lake City, Utah. Now, if anyone recognizes that city name, it's because, yes, it has hosted the Olympics before. Back in 2002, Salt Lake City hosted the games, and they're going to be using a lot of the venues that we saw in the O2 games. Now, this is a map that was from the Olympic website, and as you can see, a bit of a shorter travel time for a lot of things here. As you can see, that red circle, that's a 1-hour travel time radius. So these games a lot tighter, a lot closer together. So it's a very, very close game compared to what we have seen in the 26 games in Milan and what we will see in 2030 in France. Now, there's not much else to talk about the 34 games. Sorry, they haven't really released any info about possible new sports or, you know, other events like that. It seems like all they have laid out right now is the core winter game sports that we see. Now, if we do see ski mountaineering in the 2030 games, it could be possible that it's added as a core event in the 2034 games. Now, if the IOC is opening to adding more optional sports now to the program, I could see the Americans maybe adding something a bit more to the American type. Look at what they're doing for the 28 Summer Games in LA. They're adding a few more optional sports that are a bit more directed at the American audience. So I could kind of see that possibly coming back in the 2034 games here. But other than that, there's not much else to mention for the Utah games. We'll have to wait and see, maybe in 4 years' time, to see what their total plan is. Now, as of right now, we do not have a subjective host to the 2038 games, but with the way that bidding is going now, it kind of just comes down to who steps up first. And the only two countries that we know for sure that are kind of interested is Switzerland and Canada. Now, the Swiss are very high on hosting these games, and they seem the most interested, and it's possible that we could learn about their confirmed bid within the next year or so. Now, Switzerland's bid is pretty interesting, because usually what has happened in recent Olympic times, and of course throughout the history of the Olympics, is there's kind of just one host city. There's one host city. Maybe there's a region up to the north that hosts, you know, the mountain, you know, kind of like we saw, or we are going to see with France and what we saw with Milano Cortina. You know, one host city kind of hosts the majority of the sports, and then the skiing stuff is kind of held at another place. Switzerland's going a bit different here. Looking at this map that is on their, you know, website for the games, yeah, it's all across the country of Switzerland. There's stuff in the east, stuff in the west, south, north. Here's a complete list of who's hosting what in Switzerland if they get the bid. You could see Lausanne, Bern are going to host the closing and opening ceremonies. We got St. Moritz, which we have seen host bobsled luge before in the Olympics. Lugano, Geneva as well. You could see a couple of venues for hockey as well. So it's really going to be an entire country, and Switzerland is quite a small country, so they are it's very possible that they are able to do this, and it might be able to work. Now, I'm not a total fan of where the IOC is going with this new Olympic style, where they're just like, just put it anywhere, and you can put other events anywhere else in the world, we don't care. I'm not really a fan of that. I've always kind of enjoyed it being in one city and maybe a couple of satellite cities as well, or satellite villages if you want to call them that. But I think it will still be fun if Switzerland gets to host these games. I just am very interested to see how it will work with multiple different cities across the entire country hosting the games. But I did mention Canada at the start of this part of the video, and Canada kind of did just say before these games in Milano Cortina that they're really only interested to host if the Switzerland bid doesn't work out. Now, it does kind of seem like Switzerland's very solid, very firm on it. So we'll kind of hear in a couple of years, maybe even next one, if they get the bid. But if not, Canada said that they are welcome to step up. So that begged the question for me, which city in Canada would host the games? Now, this is kind of like my short list here. Vancouver and Calgary would be my top two for sure. Those will definitely be top two on the list. Vancouver tried to get the 2030 games, but they had some government funding issues. Calgary tried to get the games in 26, but the city voted against it as well. So they are both eyeing the games, and maybe in a couple years' time, they might think differently about it. Now, the one caveat here I put on the list is Quebec City, and in brackets I kind of put with Montreal with a question mark, because Quebec City tried to host the O2 games, and it didn't work out because Quebec had trouble getting the right registration, I think, for the skiing, the alpine skiing, because the mountains in their area don't have a certain qualification. So I think they had trouble getting that, but possibly for 2038 they might be able to. But I added Montreal to this list because I believe Montreal is making renovations to certain things around the city to maybe try and push for a bid in the future. Now, they're kind of linked with Toronto right now for one of the summer games coming up, but if they are around and don't have that summer games, possibly they could link up with Quebec City. Quebec City definitely has the venues to host certain events throughout the Olympics. Montreal might be able to help out with that as well, adding a couple more venues from them. And I just kind of paired them two together because of the way that the IOC criteria is now. As I've mentioned, you know, you're able to kind of go nearly anywhere. You're not just, you know, stuck with one city and maybe a couple of smaller places. You could go to different cities now, it seems. So I just kind of put them two together. I don't think they're going to get it. I think it's more Calgary and Vancouver. They definitely have the equipment to host the games, but I don't know if Canada will have it. It seems like Switzerland's pretty set on hosting the 2038 games, but who knows? Maybe in the future we'll be back in Canada for the Winter Olympics. So that's it for today's video, everyone. Let me know down in the comments what you think. Where do you think that the Winter Olympics should go next? Let me know down in the comments below. Also, leave a like on the video if you have not yet, and subscribe to the Zuck TV YouTube channel. Also, ring the bell to be notified of when I post next. And with that, I want to thank you guys all so much for watching this video. Take care. Peace.